One day, we see a man waking up in a strange place, and when he looks at himself, he finds his body torn apart with blue particles coming out of it. So he screams and says, "Who am I? What is this place? And why am I torn apart? Am I dead or what?" So many questions with no answers, and in situations like this, the only solution is to stay calm, to think. After a while, the man notices that he's able to control his separated body parts and put them back together. So he puts each part in its place and asks himself again, was I the one who did this to myself, or did someone else cut me up? And while he's reassembling himself, his hand doesn't fit in place, but it's not a problem because he can control it from a distance. He starts looking around and finds himself floating as if he's in space. Everything around him is floating, houses and cars, but strangely, there isn't a single living being besides him in the area. But when he focuses a bit, he notices a pair of legs sticking out from another floating house nearby, and when he goes to talk to whoever's in the other house, the ground collapses under him and he falls, but the hand that wasn't in place grabs onto the wood and lifts him up. From where he is, he calls out to the girl and asks her, "What is this place? Why is everything broken and out of place?" When she doesn't respond, he uses his hand to pull her house toward him, and he says, "I must be in a wrong world. There has to be a reason why I'm here, and I have to figure it out to get out of this strange world." After the two houses get close, he goes to talk to the girl, but then comes the shock. The girl is covered in blood with a knife stuck in her heart. But what's even stranger is that the man recognizes her. The girl's name turns out to be Cairo. He doesn't really remember her, but when he sees her, he recalls her name and even remembers some things about himself. His name is Cico, the great detective. And from here, Cico understands that he needs to solve the mystery of Cairo's death in order to get out of this world, because that's his job. But the matter turns out to be much bigger than that. Suddenly, his world shrinks, and we move to a room inside a company in our real world, where some people are watching Cico through computers and devices, and the girl working there tells Inspector Momoki Cico has awakened, and Inspector Momoki feels relieved and says, "Thank God he survived the fall," and asks the girl about the state of the Well of Identity. The girl tells him that everything is stable so far, so the inspector orders them to work accurately and assigns tasks to each of them. Togo, the girl present, is responsible for analysis. Kakufu is responsible for assisting her. Shirataki is in charge of analyzing time and place. Habudi will analyze the personalities. And finally, Akashika will be responsible for presenting theories about Cairo's murder. And the inspector says the battle won't end until the great detective Cico solves the mystery of Cairo's death. And right now, focus on the things I mentioned about the serial killer known as the perforator. We go back again to Cico and the mystery of the strange world he's in. Cico sits next to Cairo's body trying to understand what happened. The only thing he's sure of is that Cairo didn't stab herself. This isn't a movie. But what exactly happened to her? Who stabbed her? He doesn't see any sign of another being besides himself. So he moves from one room to another, and Togo and the inspector record every movement and piece of information he says so they can analyze them on their end. The room that Cico enters, Togo realizes that the books and items in it are real. As for the photo that Cico picks up, it also contains real people, mostly tennis players and famous figures, and from their point of view, the people in the photo have nothing to do with the killer because they're celebrities and such, but the inspector tells them that in most cases, the people in the photo are close to the killer, or the killer is one of them. And when they examine the room more closely, they find a date, March 2019, which is strange, because everything they're seeing now is from the memory of the killer's mind, and this process is called the Well of Identity. The memory is showing them more than one memory blended together, which is something that rarely happens. So what exactly happened in that month that the mind can't forget? The inspector tells them not to rush. Everything will reveal itself gradually. Every piece of information will make sense with patience. On the second floor, there's a girl watching everything happening in the room, not believing that all these fragmented memories were hidden inside a world formed by a madman with a desire to kill. Then a man behind her named Matsuki, who seems like an important and knowledgeable person, tells her, "Don't drift off, Hondo. Focus on keeping the Well of Identity's characters in sync." So she says, "I just have one small question I want to know the answer to. After that, I'll stay silent and focus on my work." And Hondo is curious to know more about the large blue section in the middle of the room that everyone is gathered around watching what's happening in the strange world. So the man tells her that the number of the killer's victims so far is 5, and they've detected the perforator's cognitive particles at every crime scene. They managed to reach this world through the particles or the frequencies that come out of the killer's mind when he kills. These particles stay at the crime scene and enter the meso device, forming the well of identity, which leads them into the killer's subconscious mind where a world of the unconscious is shaped, and through it, they can solve mysterious murder cases. So she tells him, "Isn't it strange that the killer finishes off his victims by drilling holes all over their bodies, and yet the world they've reached from his crimes is just a shattered and scattered place? Where are the holes?" So he satisfies her curiosity and tells her that the world was formed based on the killer's intent, and intent is totally different from what happens in reality. That's why it's not necessary to find holes in this world. So she asks him, "Have you ever thought about entering the well of identity yourself?" He tells her that it's impossible. No one can enter the well of identity except killers, and even their lives are in danger. So they must appreciate the efforts of the great detective for taking such a risk to solve the case. And their conversation ends there because it's time to carry out their mission, as by then, Cico had entered another house and found 7 characters inside, disassembled and reassembled in the same way he woke up, and he gets to know them, and they tell him that they are a family, and we understand from the analysts that 5 out of the 7 are victims of the killer, and everyone is disgusted by the killer's mentality because he lets his victims live under one roof and made them a family in his mind, and they start investigating the 2 unknown individuals in the room and discover that they are Kazuta and Inoki, who have been missing for a while, and one of the analysts notices something that Cico didn't pay attention to, which is a reflection in the glass. He enlarges the image and shows it to the inspector, and it's a shock to the inspector because it turns out to be a picture of John Walker, and he says, "Impossible, how did this happen? How did the perforator manage to communicate with John Walker too?" And we don't understand yet who John Walker is or why they're all shaken up about him, and the inspector prints a picture of Inoki, one of the missing, from the strange world and sends the analyst to show the photo to his family to confirm if it's him. And the moment the mother sees her son's picture, she starts crying. So they confirm that it's Inoki and inform the inspector. The inspector orders Matsuki to go to a specific location that existed in the killer's mind and search for anything useful regarding Inoki's abduction, hoping they can reach him. Immediately, Matsuki gets in the car with Hondo to go to the place the inspector mentioned. On the way, he asks Hondo to focus very carefully on the responses of the meso device, which is designed to emit signals whenever they get near someone with a desire to kill. Meanwhile, Cico gathers all the strange people he found and takes them to the crime scene and shows them Cairo, but they don't recognize her and tell Cico that she looks strange and that it's the first time they've seen her. Maybe she's a visitor like him. And when Cico still can't get any useful information out of them, he thinks outside the box and does something different. He flies up and gathers all the scattered parts of houses, trees, and cars and assembles them like a puzzle, and he finds that there are pieces missing. Meanwhile, the analysts from the outside see the shape of the city he assembled from above, and they notice that the missing parts form a word. Coincidentally, that word turns out to be the name of the same shop Matsuki is heading to, so they take a photo of the word and send it to Matsuki. Hondo, with her sharp mind, tells Matsuki that the word gives more than one meaning if read from different angles, so she aligns the word in a way that makes it match the shop's name. And from there, she understands that the killer must be near the road behind them, not anywhere else. And the device they have picks up signals, so they realize they're very close to the perforator's location, but it turns out the killer has been watching them the entire time without them noticing. And Hondo tells Matsuki that these signals mean there's intent for a new killing, and with 2 people currently missing, one of them is definitely going to die. Matsuki tells her not to rush and that she needs to wait for backup, but she tells him that someone's gonna die if they don't step in. So he tells her that he'll go in alone and that she should stay outside and wait for backup, but it's too late. He arrives too late and finds Inoki drenched in his blood. But when the backup arrives, they say that Inoki is still alive and might be saved. As for Cico, he's still standing in place, thinking, and sees that all the parts he assembled are falling apart and scattering again. So he says that this must be the nature of the world. Everything has to be scattered and disassembled. But at that moment, he remembers Cairo because she's the only one in this world who is a full, intact body, not disassembled, just a very normal corpse. So he quickly returns to her. After a bit of thinking, we see him calling out to the body and telling the killer to get away from Cairo right now. At that moment, parts start separating from Cairo's body, and she becomes a disassembled corpse. The other parts form into the shape of the killer. And after Cico succeeds in revealing the killer, Togo asks the inspector if they should pull the detective out of this world or not yet. The inspector tells her to wait a little longer, but something very strange happens. They all see Hondo inside the strange world, and she tells Cico to get out of the house as soon as the case is solved. Amidst the shock, we go back a bit to understand what exactly happened. It turns out that the victim they found lying in his blood, when they tried to treat him in the ambulance, was actually the perforator himself. He got up, killed everyone in the vehicle, stole the car, ran over Hondo, then took her and escaped with her down the manhole. Inside the killer's house, house, they heard the sound of the drill running, so they thought the killer was still inside. When they searched, they found someone dressed like the killer holding the drill in his hand, so they immediately shot him and he died. But when they uncovered his face, they found out it was Inoki, the very person they came to rescue, and everyone had fallen into the killer's trap. We return again to the world inside the killer's mind after Hondo asked Cico to leave, and he replied at the time saying he would leave as soon as he captured the killer. When the killer escapes, Cico chases after him, but the killer keeps appearing and disappearing, doing the opposite of what should be possible in this world. But Cico can't go after him because as soon as he exits the house, he finds John Walker, who is unknown to him. The moment Hondo sees Walker, she is literally terrified and enters the house, covering her eyes in fear, along with everyone else inside. Outside in the room, everything goes into chaos, and by order of the inspector, they focus all their analysis specifically on John Walker. But Matsuki is angry and furious with them, insisting they focus on Hondo and activate the tracking device to trace her location because she is the priority now. But the head of the organization enters and orders them not to do that because activating the device might expose them and put the organization in danger. After a long argument with Matsuki, the chief promises that they will find Hondo as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, Hondo finally wakes up but finds herself in a hideout with the killer, and he asks her what the device she had is used for. If she doesn't answer, he'll drill a hole in her head like the one in his. As for Cico, after Walker attacked him with a single blow, Walker falls to the ground and doesn't get up. Cico then stands next to the body again and starts asking himself questions. Why did the killer hide inside Cairo's body specifically? And why, after Cico left, didn't the killer escape but stayed inside the body? Even though escaping was very easy, there were no doors or windows stopping him, and after all these questions, he finally realizes something, that the killer is part of this world due to his strange behavior. From the killer's point of view, he sees the world as whole, not scattered, which is why he couldn't escape outside unless Cico confronted him and opened the door. When the analysts hear Cico's words, they understand that the killer's mind is deceiving him. Togo says that it's definitely because of the hole in his head. Everything is scattered inside him, but he's not aware of it. Hondo decides to tell the killer what the device actually does, and when he's not paying attention, she intentionally injures herself with the drill. This triggers the creation of a new well at the headquarters from Hondo's mind, through which they can identify her location, and the inspector also orders them to transfer Cico to the new well, and when he's transferred, he loses his memory again but recognizes Cairo. However, he finds her dead by suicide this time, which means there's no mystery, so they pull him out afterward. They manage to find Hondo and capture the perforator. Then the inspector goes to thank Cico, and Cico tells him that he wants to know more about John Walker since they didn't find anything useful. The inspector agrees but tells him to rest a little first. After that, Togo goes to report the latest news to the chief, and from their conversation, we understand that the identity of John Walker has been unknown to them since the foundation of the organization. They have only created 5 wells for 5 serial killers, and each time the character of John Walker has appeared to them in some form. The chief asks Togo for her opinion since she's an expert and has been with them for a while. She tells him that at first, she thought the character of Walker wasn't real and might be a shared trait among the killers, projected in their minds as a character they call John Walker. But today, when Walker appeared, all the characters were scared of him, which is evidence of the killer's emotions being reflected through the characters. This means the perforator is afraid of Walker, and that proves he's a real human. As for the chief, after hearing that, he suspects that Walker might be the creator of the serial killers, and in both cases, they must capture him. And after that, we learn a lot about the life of Detective Cico, like how he had a beautiful family and loved his wife and daughter dearly. They were his whole world, but his job as a police officer often kept him away from them until one day, a tragedy happened. A serial killer broke into his house and brutally murdered his wife and daughter in a way no one could imagine. Unfortunately, he couldn't save them because he wasn't there. The girl's skull was crushed by a killer they call the Challenger. He forced her to fight him while she was already injured and destroyed her heart and kidneys and body. He didn't leave a single part unharmed. Her condition would move even the cruelest heart. But Cico held himself together, and we see Cico waking up, startled from a nightmare of his wife and daughter's death, in a place that looks like a cell. That same day, an explosion occurs in a very famous building, and the news spreads everywhere. Hondo is sitting and reading about it in her hospital room when Matsuki enters to check on her. She then asks him a question that's been puzzling her. I heard a well was created because of me. I wonder what the world inside it looked like. She also finds out that Cico entered her world and says, lucky him, I always wanted to enter it too. But Matsuki tells her that it's forbidden. Entering the well of identity is impossible for her because if she does, she'll get lost in her own subconscious, and it will feel like a storm swallowing her with no way out. out, just like what happens with the detective. One day, he'll remain lost in his own well and won't be able to get out, and during the conversation, we find out that Hondo is lonely. Her family doesn't care about her, and they're not even with her in the hospital, and she doesn't care either because she got used to the way they treat her. Hondo goes back to talking about Cico, and Matsuki tells her her way of speaking reminds him of how Cico used to be. But Matsuki is not a fan of Cico. He literally can't stand him and always belittles him. We return to the explosion site from the morning. Police and detectives are gathered around, investigating the case. The people working in the organization talk to the chief and tell him that the cognitive particles didn't explode with the blast this time. When they analyzed them, they found they belonged to a known killer named the Bomber, and the chief approves creating a well from those particles. So the inspector summons Cico, and when we see Cico coming out of his room, we notice he's in handcuffs and walking past the rooms of criminals who were previously arrested. That's when we learn that Cico is actually imprisoned in the organization for a crime he committed after the death of his wife and daughter. He's not just some ordinary detective in the system. Later, Cico enters the Bomber's well of identity, and this world is filled with people climbing a very tall place, surrounded by a waterfall that blocks their vision. As soon as they reach the top, bullets are fired randomly at their heads. People panic and run, and the area fills with terror and chaos. But Cico doesn't care about anything happening around him because he spots Cairo's dead body lying on the ground. When he sees her, he's able to recognize her again and recall his name and job. Turns out, Cairo is Cico's guide, planted inside the well to help him remember he's a detective and start investigating her death, while they observe and gather data about the criminal. The analysts outside gather some data and discover that around 75 people are present, but none of them are real because they have no data on any of them. While they're talking and monitoring what's going on, Cico gets shot by the sniper and dies, so they quickly pull him out of the well and bring him back again. But again, he dies. They keep inserting and extracting him again and again until finally, in one attempt, he manages to hide behind a wall and avoid being shot. He sits and thinks to himself, feeling an uneasy sensation toward Cairo's body that he doesn't understand. When he looks around, he sees people jumping from the tower to kill themselves. That's when he asks himself, why are they doing this? What's the difference between jumping from the tower or a bullet to the head? Both lead to the same result, death. While he's lost in thought, a girl screams, raising her voice, saying, I can't take it anymore. She stands on the ledge and jumps, but in an involuntary reaction, Cico grabs her hand to stop her from falling. He spots below the body of a dead man, and suddenly he lights up and loudly says, I understand everything. I solved the mystery. The man lying on the ground had jumped from the other side and is directly beneath them now. That means the tower is moving, and the sniper is shooting from random directions with that much speed and ease. The first bullet hit Cairo. It was extremely fast and perfectly accurate, and that couldn't happen during movement. So the sniper must be targeting them from the same location while they're running. Cico pieces everything together in his mind and imagines how the incident happened. It starts with a bullet that struck Cairo and made her fall to the ground. From the look on her face and hand, she didn't die instantly and managed to point out the sniper's location with her finger, but because the tower is moving, the sniper's position changed. After understanding everything, all that remains is to find out who the sniper is. So he sits again in a corner and thinks until someone crawls past him, screaming for help. But he looks odd. If you focus a little, you'll notice he's faking it and enjoying what's happening. At that moment, the great detective understands everything. With one look, he realizes that this man is the killer, pretending to be a victim inside his own mind so he can enjoy watching people die. The analysts outside also managed to find out that the characters in the criminal's mind were soldiers and victims of an explosion that happened in the Middle East 4 years ago, and that's when the political alarm goes off. Togo asks the inspector, what are we going to do? The inspector says they must cover up the situation because it's a dangerous political crime. If exposed, everything about the organization will be revealed, and all their secrets will leak. But the important thing is that they manage to arrest the real criminal after identifying him, and they imprison him in a cell next to Cico's, and the next day, the detectives sit with the first criminal we met, the perforator, and interrogate him. From his speech, they find out that his IQ is very high, and they might be able to benefit from him later. Meanwhile, the analysts are in their usual room, and this time they send someone other than Cico into the well of identity. His name is Anido, and the moment Anido sees Cairo's body, he remembers his name and calls himself the Great Detective, but he doesn't finish the sentence and dies. Outside, they realize Anido is weak and not that good, and they don't like him. That's why they can't connect with him, and he won't last with them, and he won't be a good substitute for Cico. They tell the inspector that everyone they've tested wasn't impressive, except for Cico, who actually eliminates serial killers. They've known him for a long time and can understand how he thinks and help him in his investigations, so the inspector tells them that's not an excuse. Cico needs rest. Around that time, a live stream on YouTube goes viral across the world. Everyone's talking about it. A girl is inside a grave, locked in, and says during the live stream that she's been kidnapped by someone called the gravedigger and asks for help. She says she's been in the grave for more than 2 days, but is confident she won't die. Someone will save her. The police and everyone are investigating the case, which is the 7th crime by the gravedigger. Investigators from the organization arrive with the Miso device and ask the police a few questions about the crime. A police officer tells them that the kidnapped girl's name is Cico, and she was returning from school when it happened. The only thing found at the crime scene was her phone. The device successfully picks up some particles at the crime scene, so the investigators quickly return to the organization to build a well of identity as fast as possible. They bring out Cico to prepare for the new mission, and indeed, Cico enters the well into a new world. This time, he finds a charred body with no visible features, but based on his instincts, he guesses it's Cairo's body, and that his mission is to solve her murder. When he looks out the window, he sees the houses around him moving, fire everywhere, and explosions. It's chaos. He sees no one else in the place, so he's puzzled and asks, how did Cairo burn to death in a room with no fire or even traces of a previous fire? When he looks again, this time he spots a little girl also looking out a window in another building, and then an explosion happens behind him, blasting him out of the window. He falls and dies, and they have to pull him out and send him back in again. He keeps dying and coming back in different ways, once falling from the window, burning, once grabbing a pole but slipping and falling. The analysts find out that the girl Cico saw is Cico, the kidnapped girl, and they start wondering what fires and explosions have to do with the gravedigger. Why, this time specifically, were they able to find particles from the killer at the crime scene? The head of the organization enters and asks for the latest updates from the inspector, who tells him that Cico has definitely been in the well for a long time now and needs a break, but the inspector says that Cico can hold on a bit longer. The chief responds by saying that might have been true when he was a police officer, but now he's a serial killer, and saving people is no longer a motivation for him, which means he won't be able to hold on inside the well much longer, so they pull him out and let him rest for a while in his room. After that, he re-enters the well, and this time he's fast enough. He jumps out the window before the explosion's fire catches him. He grabs onto a pole, climbs up, reaches the girl's building, and climbs it. When she sees him, she hugs him and says, "I was so scared. This place is full of fire and bodies." After making sure the girl is okay, he starts thinking again to solve the mystery. He remembers Cairo's charred body in a clean room, so he concludes that someone must have moved her body after she died and tried to hide it among the corpses. They created the fire to cover up her death with another unrelated fire. Outside, one of the analysts smartly figures out that the gravedigger isn't responsible for this particular crime. Someone else tried to hide the murder within the gravedigger's crime spree. That's why particles were found at this crime scene. Cico reassures the girl and tells her he'll get her out of the burning house. She sees another house burning in the distance and tells Cico that Ono's house is burning badly too. He asks her who Ono is, and she says he's a failure who set fire to his house to start a new life, even though his family was inside at the time. She also says that Ono always stares at her because he thinks she's spying on him. The analysts take Ono's name, run it through their system, and find his home address. They notify the police, and Matsuki goes with them, along with Hondo, to investigate. Inside the house, they find a secret passage. They enter and open a barrel, and to their shock, they find Cico dead. It turns out the live stream was pre-recorded, and the girl had been dead for a while, but in the end, they arrest Ono and throw him in prison. Cico comes out of the well, and the inspector goes to talk to him, telling him that they were able to arrest the culprit thanks to him. Cico asks about the girl and if she's okay. The inspector tells him, unfortunately, the live stream was recorded and the girl had been dead for several days. Cico is shocked, and it shows on his face. The inspector asks him if he has the desire to kill the criminal. Cico tells him that during the time he's spent in the organization's prison, he's caused 5 criminals to commit suicide. So yes, he definitely has the desire to kill the criminal because he can't control himself. The anger and killing energy inside him is too strong to contain. At the crime scene in front of the killer's house, with people gathered, Hondo spots a strange-looking man who seems familiar to her. She starts following him. He notices her, stops, and removes his cap. When she sees his face, she remembers. It's Kazuta, the missing person from the perforator case, but Kazuta quickly puts the cap back on his head and runs away from her, so she returns to the car and tells Matsuki, "I saw Kazuta. He looked okay, but there was a hole in his head. He was acting strange and ran as soon as he saw me. Matsuki tells her, we need to find him fast. I can't believe he's still alive. And the whole ride in the car, they keep talking about Kazuta. She doesn't understand why he was in that specific place, and Matsuki tells her that literally all the citizens of Japan were focused on the major crime that happened, and that in the district where the killer's house is, there are around 2,000 people living, so to him it's just a coincidence. She tells him, let's assume Kazuta wasn't there just to watch like everyone else. He was there to investigate the copycat, the killer pretending to be the gravedigger. Matsuki asks her, and what would make him do that? So she tells him, maybe Kazuta is the real gravedigger. That's why he ran when he saw me. He looked strange. He wasn't acting like someone just watching. She then asks Matsuki, what would you do if you were a criminal and someone found you out? He says, I'd definitely get rid of the person who exposed me. She tells him that Kazuta, before running away, was acting weird, like he wanted to attack her but something stopped him. She also says the reason they haven't been able to catch the gravedigger until now is that his cognitive particles are very low and nearly invisible. For a criminal who kidnapped 6 people before and put them in a barrel, torturing them in horrific ways, it's impossible he didn't have a strong killing intent. There should have been a huge amount of particles. Her theory is that Kazuta's killing intent is scattered, mixed up with many other desires inside him because of the hole in his head. Maybe that's why he didn't finish her off when he saw her, and why his particles didn't appear at the crime scene. To understand better, she asks Matsuki to return quickly to Ono's house. She's carrying the particle tracking device. She goes, activates the device, and confirms her theory. She tells Matsuki that when Kazuta plans a crime, he can go through with it. But if something happens quickly, without planning, his emotions get confused, just like what happened earlier. They collect the particles and return to the organization, and they send Cico into Kazuta's well. The world Cico enters is a floating house in the sky, with a small piece of land around it. As soon as he enters the house, he finds Cairo dead with a lot of blood around her. The moment he looks at the body, he loudly says he solved the mystery. That's because the first thing he notices is that they're floating, and the blood coming from Cairo is flowing normally. In a place like this, the blood should float and move in random directions. That means the killer manipulated the blood, brought it in, and arranged it a certain way around Cairo to hide something. When he looks closely and focuses, he sees a little girl. The analysts outside search for the girl's identity and discover that the killer combined the appearances of his 6 buried victims into one girl. At that moment, they're able to prove Kazuta's guilt after finding the victims inside the well. They also manage to locate the house inside his mind, so they send the police, Matsuki, and Hondo to that place. Inside the well, Cico is speaking to the girl, asking her, why are you hiding here? She tells him, there's a monster outside. I'm scared of it. He asks her about the criminal who killed Cairo. She says, I don't know. Maybe he's outside fighting the monster. So Cico goes looking for something to arm himself with in case he sees the monster. While searching, he finds a torn piece of a photo. The analysts assemble the parts and identify it as a photo of Kazuta graduating from middle school. The police found that photo while searching his room when he was one of the perforator's victims. In the photo, there's also the girl he loved. After a lot of analysis, they understand that Kazuta has a confusion between feelings of love and murder, and he used to send kidnapping videos to the people he loved. As for Cico, he grabs a vase and goes looking for the monster. Since the place is very small, it doesn't take long to search, and he doesn't find any trace of the monster. So he goes underground, and at that moment, he's shocked to see John Walker, the unknown man who appears in the minds of every serial killer, holding Kazuta and finishing him off before escaping. Meanwhile, the police arrive at Kazuta's house. They enter and search it. They find a room, and when they open it, gasoline spills out, and in an instant, the house catches fire and explodes. The inspector sends a rescue team to the house immediately. Luckily, Matsuki and Hondo had gone to the girl Kazuta loved, so nothing happened to them. Hondo talks to the girl, and Matsuki gets a call. He excuses himself and steps outside to take it. Hondo asks the girl if she knows anything about Kazuta, his life, or if he ever loved someone. The girl notices that Hondo is bleeding from her injury and gives her a tissue. When it gets soaked with blood, she keeps it with her. She tells her she never felt like Kazuta loved anyone, nor did she hear of such a thing. Hondo tells her, Kazuta loved you. The girl laughs and says, that's impossible. Kazuta and I weren't close. He invited me and some friends over to his house once. Nothing more. We weren't even friends, really? Hondo asks her, if you weren't friends and you weren't interested, how do you know he didn't love anyone? The girl laughs and seems embarrassed. Hondo asks her, is there someone in your life, or was there? At that moment, Matsuki returns and says, there's a problem. We need to go back now. Hondo tells him, wait, I'm almost done. She turns back to the girl and asks, did you love Kazuta? This time, the girl gets nervous and stares intensely at Hondo Hondo's wound. Suddenly, Hondo stands up, raises her gun, and tells the girl to surrender. What Hondo understood, from her looks and behavior, is that the girl enjoys blood and watching people in pain. That's why Kazuta used to send her the videos. She tells Matsuki, this girl is the gravedigger. Kazuta did all of it for her. Suddenly, a knife is thrown at Hondo, but Matsuki takes the hit with his arm, though nothing happens to him. He sees Kazuta on the second floor, fires at him, but Kazuta quickly escapes, and Matsuki points the gun at the girl's head and tells her not to move. Hondo contacts the inspector and tells him that the gravedigger turns out to be two people, Kazuta, who executes, and Inami, his lover, who guides him. Matsuki is injured, and they need backup immediately. Matsuki asks Hondo if Kazuta has probably escaped by now, but Hondo tells him, of course not. He's doing all this for his princess. He wouldn't leave her behind. Then she adds, but to us, she's worthless. Shoot her. Kill her. Matsuki is shocked by her words. Hondo tells him, fine, I'll kill her myself, and she fires random shots with the gun. As soon as Kazuta hears her, he jumps down with the knife in his hand to protect his lover. He goes for Hondo to kill her, but Hondo shoots at him, yet not a single bullet hits him. The only bullet aimed at his head passes through the hole and exits out. It doesn't affect him. Her bullets run out, and he's about to jump on her. At lightning speed, she grabs a knife too, and just as he gets close, she kills him with it. With cold indifference, she collects his cognitive particles and logs them into the device as if nothing had happened. After the investigation is closed, they release Cico and hold a funeral for the officers who died in the fire at Kazuta's house. They start thinking about the issue of John Walker, and someone asks, how many wells has Walker appeared in so far? Togo tells him this was the 6th. They begin to wonder how Walker is able to turn these criminals into such savage serial killers. One of them suggests, let's say he's a psychiatrist. That could be the common link between them. But they respond, saying the criminals' medical records are clean. None of them ever saw a doctor. Plus, Walker appears in their subconscious and always shows up the same way, with the same clothes and blurred face. Everyone's confused. They're dying to find out who Walker is and what links him to these killers. Another person says, what if Walker has a device like the meso that analyzes murder particles, but instead of creating an identity well, it lets him penetrate anyone's subconscious? We shouldn't rule out the existence of such a device. Even if we're the ones operating the meso, we still don't know much about it. He asks Togo to confirm something he heard, that Shirokuma, the meso's developer, is missing. She tells him yes, and that's why no one can access the device's core element. After thinking for a bit, the guy says, we don't need more than one device anyway. The meso we have is enough. In short, someone among us is using it in a different way. That's why Walker keeps appearing as if disguised, his face always blurred. Some agree with him, others oppose the idea. Togo tells them they've only been working on the meso for 1 year, but the first crime occurred 3 years ago. If what he says is true, then whoever did this was around during the prototype phase. After they all start suspecting one another again, they shift the conversation back to Walker himself. They say that at first, Walker appeared randomly with no connection, but now they've discovered a link between the killers, Kazuta, and the perforator. That means Walker got to Kazuta through the perforator somehow, and the only known connection between the perforator and Kazuta was when he drilled into his head. So Walker may have been present then. Later, they receive news that investigators found cameras and loudspeakers in the girls' and Kazuta's houses. They assume Walker set them up and was watching through the cameras. And if Kazuta was under surveillance, then Walker is surely going to target Inami as well. The inspector preps Cico and meets with the chief and Matsuki to check on his injury. Matsuki tells them he knows Anido was useless in the well, and that being a detective inside doesn't have to mean being a criminal. If the only requirement is murder, then he has the perfect person for the job. And of course, we all guess he means Hondo. As for Cico, he's already inside the well. He wakes up to find himself alone on a train, with nothing around except blood spilling from Cairo's body. The analysts identify that the train is the same one Cico and Inami used to ride on their way to school. Inside the well, the 6 kidnapped people appear. They also learn that Inami's mother died after being run over by a train, and it turns out to be the same train Cico is on now. As he walks through it, he meets young Inami. He asks her, "Are you the one who killed Cairo?" She looks at him and doesn't answer, but when he focuses, he sees a blood-soaked tissue in her hand, yet her clothes have no blood. That means she didn't kill her. He sits with her, and on the other side, Kazuta is sitting, watching them. But she's not paying attention. Cico invites him to come sit with them. Meanwhile, the police are able to locate the bodies after Anami confessed their location without any resistance. Hondo goes to meet with the chief, who tells her that Matsuki recommended her to become a detective and enter the identity well. She leaves and thanks Matsuki. He tells her that what he did isn't as noble as she thinks. To enter the well, one must be a serial killer, or at least have the intent to kill. That's why he nominated her. She's stunned by his words and asks, "Why are you saying that?" He says, "Why did you stab yourself with a drill when you were kidnapped? Why did you separate from me at Ono's house and go to the basement alone? How did you notice Anami was the gravedigger? When you claimed it was to track particles, you killed Kazuta. Did you enjoy his death like your face suggested?" He tells her, while she's still shocked, that he nominated her to protect himself from her. Nothing more, and he walks away. Meanwhile, Togo goes to the inspector and tells him that those loudspeakers, they've seen them before in an old case. The case of a killer they called the Challenger, the one who killed Cicato's entire family. And after they discover this dangerous information, Matsuki goes, by order of the inspector, to the last place the Challenger was seen. As soon as he arrives, he finds the crime scene still preserved from when Cico eliminated the Challenger after discovering he was behind the murder of his family. He analyzes the particles using the Miso device and contacts the inspector, telling him that the particles they found belong to Cico. What's strange is that even after all these years, the particles are still present in large numbers, meaning his killing intent was tremendously high. The inspector tells him there should also be a hidden passage in the Challenger's house. He should enter and look for where the loudspeakers were. Matsuki follows the instructions and analyzes the particles in the area, and he's able to detect the Challenger's own particles. He informs the inspector and asks whether they'll prepare the well now and send in Cico, but the inspector tells him that this time they're going to send in Hondo. Matsuki is surprised and asks how they can send her in this quickly. The inspector tells him they want to test her, and they think this mission will be perfect. Matsuki assures him that Hondo really is a great fit, not just because she's an exceptional investigator, but because there's something unique and different in her personality as well. While Hondo is entering the well, the analysts outside are holding a meeting to explain the situation. They say that John Walker was likely targeting Kazuta and Anami while he was observing the perforator. The same thing happened when he was watching the Challenger. Most likely, he was looking for his next target to turn into a serial killer. The only people who ever entered the Challenger's home were his victims, and Cico, who shot and killed him when he entered the house. One of the analysts asks, since Cico shot the Challenger as soon as he entered the house, doesn't that mean John Walker may have influenced Cico's crime too? They respond that there's a possibility Walker had already targeted Cico earlier, back when his daughter fell victim to the Challenger. Meanwhile, Hondo wakes up inside Cico's well. This time, the world is high up, slightly dark, full of people being electrocuted by lightning. Hondo looks around, trying to escape, but her hand is chained to Cairo's body. As soon as she sees the corpse, she recognizes who she is and what her role is. But this time, it's different. She's the only one who remembers her full name. Also in the scene are his wife and daughter, standing scared and motionless. Cico, on the other hand, is sitting in his room thinking about Hondo after learning she entered the well. He starts counting her crimes. The first was the attempted suicide when she drilled into her head, and that counts as attempted murder according to the Miso system. That's why a well was created for her too. The second was Kazuta's death, meaning she's involved in at least 2 crimes within a single month. After long thought, Cico realizes that Hondo might be inside his well, which worries him, since that means Walker might be found inside his well too. The analysts notice that the ground in Cico's world is numbered, and the lightning only strikes numbers 3, 8, and 5. All the people dying inside his mind are his family, relatives, and friends. Inside, Hondo is searching for the key to unlock her cuffs, and there's no sign of John Walker yet. By chance, Hondo finds Cico dead beside them, and from his appearance, she realizes he's the one who chained her to Cairo's corpse. She interprets this as Cico trying to protect her, since lightning doesn't strike the same place twice. She starts counting the seconds between each lightning strike and finds that each one occurs exactly 9 seconds apart, meaning this isn't natural lightning, it's artificial. She yells at everyone to stop moving and tells them that lightning won't strike the same spot twice. If they keep running and moving around, they'll die. Cico's wife tells her that other people nearby are dying too and they need to find a way to warn them. Hondo says it's not her job, she's just an investigator, and it's not her duty to save people. If the wife wants to save someone, she should do it herself. She spots a device from a distance and goes to investigate it. The analysts outside are shocked when they see the device and say, "That's a control unit." They're baffled. How could this be? The organization was founded just 1 year ago, but this well is about 3 years old. So how is a meso control unit present inside? The presence of that device means the well is currently connected to Cicato's subconscious in the present, not the past. The meso is linking them to the present. When Hondo approaches the device, she finds a name written on it, Osaki Kiki. Togo asks the inspector, "Who's that?" He tells her that she was one of the Challenger's last victims. After Cico killed the Challenger, the inspector saved her, but she later disappeared. They searched for her but never found her. They never expected to see her name here, and because they don't know what might happen with the control unit, they decide to extract Hondo immediately, but a group of investigators and inspectors walk in with the chief and stop them. They tell the inspector, "You're under arrest for inciting murder." He's shocked and asks them, "Who exactly did I incite to kill?" They tell him, "You incited around 6 people, because you're John Walker, aren't you?" They say they analyzed the loudspeakers that were found and discovered they were connected to the computer in his house. And just moments ago, they found a corpse in his home. And the shocking part is that the body was Shirokuma, the developer of Miso. They remove the inspector and appoint Togo to take his place. They gather information about Osaki and learn that her life was a mess. Her father refused to care for her. She entered the hospital at the age of 18 after a suicide attempt and became an artist after leaving, but returned to the hospital again after 3 more suicide attempts. She was kidnapped by the Challenger at 21 and later rescued by Inspector Momoki after Cico shot the Challenger. Despite being in the hospital, she disappeared after 3 months and is still missing to this day. On the day she vanished, a mass coma incident affected the nurses, and that's all the info the inspector had secretly stored in the system. They're confused and wonder why Momoki was looking into Osaki's records and keeping them separately. Even stranger, her records and data completely vanished, except for what the inspector secretly logged. So, they realize the inspector is the one who erased the data. They report all the new information they have against him to the police. Meanwhile, they focus on rescuing Hondo, who got stuck due to a device malfunction when she decided to go inside the control unit in Cicato's mind. Togo meets with the director, who tells her they're searching for particles belonging to Inspector Momoki to create a well, and he's confident they'll find a control unit inside his well just like the one in Cicato's. Once they enter Osaki's well, they'll be able to locate and rescue the lost Hondo. But to make this happen, they need 2 more people to help enter the well and make the extraction easier. That's why they prepare Cico and the perforator to enter Momoki's well. Togo reminds them both to cooperate inside. The perforator, curious, asks if they'll see 2 versions of Cairo since there are 2 detectives. Togo tells him that unfortunately, they have no idea because this is the first time 2 investigators are entering a well at the same time. The 2 go in, and the perforator wakes up first, but the analysts tell Togo that no information has appeared about the well so far. She tells them to be patient since everything is new to them. Once both awaken, they find themselves in a desert, and the perforator doesn't look like his usual self. That's because, inside the well, he appears as his true self, Anido. His current appearance came from cosmetic surgeries he underwent to hide his identity. They recognize each other and recall their names and their mission. They agree to cooperate to solve Cairo's murder. They see footprints in the sand, but if they follow them, they'll lose a lot of water due to the extreme heat. So they remove their heavy clothes and stay in place. Cico keeps staring at Cairo's body, deep in thought. Anido, however, gets bored and says they'll die of hunger and thirst at this rate. So he decides to follow the footprints, telling Cico to join him later. After walking in the desert for a long time, they learn nothing. The place is just endless sand. Anido keeps walking until he gets tired, and Cico eventually catches up. They both notice that the sun hasn't moved since they arrived, meaning time is frozen. While Cico is daydreaming, a hawk flies overhead and accidentally knocks him off a sand dune. He slides into quicksand and barely escapes thanks to Anido's advice. Outside, the interrogation with Inspector Momoki continues. He refuses to speak. The investigators mock him, saying, "How does it feel knowing your old teammates are exploring your well?" He's shocked when he hears this and yells at them to get them out immediately. Meanwhile, Cico and Anido finally notice that the footprints disappear because their owner stepped into quicksand and died. They retrieve the body and find signs that the person didn't just die from falling. He was beaten or tortured. The corpse is pointing to a location. When they search the spot, they dig out the control unit, and it's labeled as Osaki's well. Cico tells Anido that he's going in and to pull him out in exactly 10 minutes. He enters, but meanwhile, Inspector Momoki loses control, enters a panic, and screams that they need to pull Cico out. It's a trap. He says, "I didn't kill anyone, and those aren't my particles." Cico wakes up to find himself at home with his wife, and he goes with her to wake their daughter. This time, he remembers everything. His real life, what happened to his family, the organization, and that he told Anido to pull him out in 10 minutes. There's no Cairo this time, no murder, no mystery. He's living an entirely normal life. He even goes to work where there's a meeting about the Challenger. He pulls one of the officers aside, takes him to a house and tells him, "This is the Challenger's house. Call for backup and arrest him." The officer is shocked and asks, "How do you know where he is?" But Cico doesn't explain. He just says he had been there before. He decides to go in alone, knocks on the door, and the Challenger opens and says, "What does a cop want from me this early?" Cico challenges him, saying he's here to play a game his way. The Challenger lives up to his name and accepts. They go inside for a fair fight, no weapons, each proving his strength. The fight begins. The Challenger isn't just a killer, he's trained in martial arts and boxing. With just 2 punches, he knocks Cico down, twists his arm behind his back, breaks it, and slashes his face open. Cico grabs his gun and shoots the Challenger in the leg, but he doesn't give up. He lunges at Cico and starts choking him. Once he gains control, he ties Cico up and lands several punches to his face. Cico shoots him in the stomach. When he falls and dies, Cico keeps hitting him, disfiguring his face and breaking his teeth like a madman. A coworker enters and finds him killing the Challenger. Before calling an ambulance, Cico tells him to go to the basement. There's a victim there. The officer does as told, goes down, and finds a girl. He asks for her name. She says, "My name is Osaki," then faints. He rushes her to the hospital, and Cico goes too for treatment. That night, he visits Osaki's room and tells her he's with the investigation department. But when he sees her, he realizes it's Cairo. Confused, he asks, "What's your connection to the Mizuhano?" But he remembers he's not in the real world, and she probably doesn't understand. So he relaxes and calls her Osaki, asking her about the Challenger. She says she doesn't want to talk about him. She's not the only one who remembers him. He doesn't understand what she means. She says her memories and feelings leak uncontrollably into people around her. And just as she finishes speaking, he sees the Challenger attacking Cairo, realizes it's one of her memories. She then gets a strange feeling and says, "Someone else is here with us. We're not alone." Cico hears a whistling sound. She tells him, "That's the person who's going to kill me tonight." As soon as the person enters, Cico hits him on the head. He falls and vanishes. Cico is shocked and asks Osaki how he disappeared. She says, "He wasn't real." He asks, "What do you mean?" She says, "You're inside my dream. You were sleeping and entered my mind. Everything happening now is just a dream." And right after she says that, he wakes up in a hospital bed with his wife and daughter beside him. His co-worker who brought him in, Momoki, looking slightly younger, enters and tells him he spoke to the higher-ups and the police. They're going to rule it's self-defense. After they leave, Cico goes to verify what he saw the night before. He enters the same room and finds Osaki there. Now he's confused. Was yesterday real or a dream? She tells him, "You're not the only one who enters my dreams. All the people who come are killers who want to kill me. They can torture me in my dreams however they want. First, it was just one. Then he started calling his friends, and now they all come one after the other." Cico suspects Walker and asks, "Was the first one a man with a cane, dressed in a costume?" She says, "Yes, that's him." So he promises to end her suffering soon and leaves. He goes to the man who tried to kill her in last night's dream, and that man turns out to be a police officer. He may not have committed crimes in the real world, but he enjoyed torturing Osaki in her dreams. We don't know what he did to him, but then he goes to Osaki's room and tells her that the killer who came yesterday won't come again. She thanks him, and he tells her he has a question. The dream from about a week ago had fireworks in it, but those fireworks only just happened yesterday. She tells him that most of the people who enter her dreams do so with their awareness, future plans, and emotions, so maybe that's what affected the dream and caused the fireworks to appear. So he tells her that means your dreams sometimes show the future, and she tells him maybe. Then he returns to his room and starts thinking and says to himself, "Is it possible that everything that happened to me was just a long dream I had when I hacked into Osaki's mind and didn't realize it? And that explains why she always used to appear in the identity while I kept entering." But he still doesn't believe himself and feels confused. But the one thing he's sure of is that he has to eliminate eliminate all the serial killers he knows before they commit more crimes and innocent people die and stop the torture in Cairo. He returns to work after getting a bit better and meets Momoki, and they agree to go and visit Osaki. Momoki asks him about his health, and he tells him he's fine and spending a lot of time with his family just like he wanted. So Momoki jokes with him and tells him this doesn't look like someone who's spending time with his family. He looks like he just came out of a fight. As soon as they both enter Osaki's room, they find Shirokoma, the Mizuhanome developer, with a device on her head, and when he finishes his work and leaves, Momoki apologizes for interrupting and asks Shirokoma for his name before he leaves and closes the door, leaving Cico with Osaki. Cico tells Osaki that he went to most of the killers who used to appear in her dreams, and most of them died the same way they used to torture her, but before they died, he used to ask them about John Walker and none of them had any information, so that means only Walker is left and all the suffering will end. She tells him, "Don't bother, my dreams won't end unless I die. Even if all the killers die, my memories will haunt me and kill me." She tells him that when she asked him before to save her and end her suffering, she didn't mean that he should eliminate the killers. She wanted him to kill her in a natural way. And she's really scared because she saw that in the future she's going to die in a strange way, and that death will destroy and distort the entire world. So he tells her that he's just a police officer and all he can do is eliminate the serial killers, and he'll find John Walker soon and finish him, and she won't see his face again, and then he leaves the room. About a month passes, and he wakes up at night to a call from Momoki who tells him that Osaki disappeared and that more than 13 nurses were found unconscious in her room. So far, only 3 have woken up, and all 3 say they had the same dream with the same details. As for Cico, there's a possibility that Osaki somehow made the nurses lose consciousness and then escaped from the hospital. But Momoki tells him that he visited her 2 days ago and she was barely conscious. She wasn't in any state to do that to the nurses and escape, so Cico tells him that he doesn't have any information and can't help him, and hangs up. Later, he meets Momoki at work and they talk a bit, and he asks him about Osaki. He tells him that he's still looking for her and the only thing he found out is that she has a strange ability and they're using her in research to invade the subconscious through dreams, but he has no proof of it. And he tells him, if you remember, there was a guy called Shirokoma we saw in the hospital. I think she became one of his research subjects. While they're talking in the car, someone passes by in front of them, and as soon as Cico sees him, he remembers that he was one of the people in the subconscious world of the perforator, so he remembers that this is one of the criminals he's supposed to arrest. He goes to his house, but before he enters, someone threatens him from behind and tells him to drop his gun. When he turns around, he sees that it's Hondo who is talking to him, and when she sees him, she's shocked and tells him she's Hondo and used to work in the organization, and says to him, "Seriously? You two fell into a well inside a well and got lost." But Cico gets angry at her and tells her this is his real world, and everything that happened was just a dream of a girl who can see the future. So she tells him that the world they're in is exactly like the real world, and she entered here through a well that existed inside someone's brain, and she's been in this place for about 20 minutes. So he gets surprised and asks her about the date, and she tells him that we're in April 2019. That moment, he's shocked because the time he thinks it is now is 2018, and so much time has passed since he entered the well. Not 20 minutes like she felt. Then suddenly, the world starts to collapse, and he tells Hondo that he has to get her out of here before the world collapses. But the 10 minutes are over for Anido, so he pulls him out and returns him back to the desert again. But before he leaves, he throws a note to Hondo. As soon as he exits, Anido asks him what he did inside, but Cico lies to him and tells him he doesn't remember anything. That's when Cico notices that he and Anido both have a mark on their hands like they were tied together, and there's also a piece of Cairo's clothes in Anido's pocket. So he tells him that means they were tied to Cairo's body and couldn't move from their place, and it must have been you who untied us since you woke up first. Anido tells him that he found that piece of cloth in the corpse of the man they found, and that in the guy's pocket he also randomly found a photo of himself with his wife and daughter. He tells Cico that he's sure he doesn't remember anything, but he will make him remember because the effect of this device doesn't work on him since he already lost a part of his brain, and the device affects that part specifically, which is why he remembers everything. So when Togo hears that from Anido, she tells them Anido tricked us and we need to get them out immediately, but then a problem occurs with the device because of what Anido said. As for Anido, he apologizes to Cico and tells him that he entered this place before because he was searching for Hondo, and a malfunction happens in the well and the memories and all the wells get mixed together, and the area around them turns into Cico's identity well. The signal gets cut off between the organization and the well, and the analysts aren't able to keep track of Cico. To understand the reason behind this confusion, they bring Matsuki back to Momoki's house so he can analyze the particles again and figure out how this mess happened, since they suspect that the particles that were in Momoki's house are the cause and might have been mixed with other particles from Cico. That's why the mix-up mix-up between the wells occurred, so Matsuki immediately returns to Momoki's house, while Cico gets furious with Anido and is just about to kill him, but Cico calms down and starts thinking rationally again. He tells him that surely John Walker wants you dead, or maybe you want to die yourself to be doing all these stupid things, but I'm not going to kill you because that's not my goal. He tells him that he had noticed something strange about him since they entered the well, and that after he came out of Osaki's well, he kept counting the grains of sand in a weird way. And since our detective is a genius in his own right, he figures out that Anido has had an obsession with math and numbers in general for a very long time, and that's why he made the hole in his head, to stop the thinking and make the obsession disappear. And after he entered the identity well, that hole disappeared and he returned to his real self, which is why he wasn't comfortable and did all of this to die and get rid of his suffering forever. So Anido is impressed by his intelligence and tells him that's exactly what happened. Then Cico tells him there's no time for their issues now. They have to cooperate in order to get out of the well and search for Hondo. Anido asks him how they're going to find Hondo in the middle of the storm around them, so he tells him that because of the well mix-up, they're probably in one well now but with different worlds. So maybe if the wells mix again, they'll find Hondo by chance. As for Hondo, after Cico left her, she took his notebook and went to the investigation bureau and saw everything he had recorded about the serial killers and John Walker and continued the investigations after him. She found that all the information he wrote about the serial killers was complete and true, except the perforator. He wasn't mentioned on any page of the notebook. She's very surprised because they found Walker inside his subconscious. So for sure Walker had previously approached him to join the girl's dreams and torture her. To understand what happened, she goes to the perforator's house and tells him that she's a police officer and an investigator and starts telling him a few things he's planning to do. And when he sees that everything she says is correct, he believes her and lets her talk to him and ask him questions. She asks him what he knows about John Walker. He tells her that he met him once in one of his dreams and he offered him the chance to torture a girl, but he didn't like the idea because he hates dreams. And after he refused, Walker offered him 2 more times, but he still wouldn't carry out his wish. She asks him if he remembers any information about the date and time when John Walker met him, and he tells her the exact date and time. So she starts thinking if on that date there was anyone from the organization who was absent from the place, and suddenly she remembers the head of the organization who had a trip to New York at that time. So she calls him from an unknown number and asks him, "Is John Walker with me?" The head is shocked and hangs up the call on her, and from his reaction and the way he panicked, she confirms that the head of the organization is John Walker himself. As soon as she solves this mystery, the Mizuhano machine activates immediately and takes her to Cico's world, and she tells him right away that the boss is John Walker and that she was able to solve the case thanks to him. So Cico tells her that what matters now is finding a way to return from this world, and maybe they can find a solution and a way back by returning to Kairo's body, since she's been our guide all this time. As for Matsuki, after going to Momoki's house, he finds that one of Cico's pictures was still in the room, and this picture had a lot of Cico's particles on it. That's why the wells got mixed up. Cico, Hondo, and Anido return to the body's location and find that the storm is no longer there, and the analysts start receiving their data again on the screen. So Togo orders them to try to extract them as fast as possible before the data disappears again. And they're actually able to pull them out, and Cico tells them that the boss turned out to be John Walker. So the analysts are ordered to call the police and report him, but just then the power goes out, and we see the boss walking inside the organization and entering a secret room. He inputs some data and leaves the room, and the surprise, Osaki is still alive, floating in the room and unconscious. The boss wakes her up and controls her like a robot, and she walks through the facility, and with every step she takes next to someone, they faint and get trapped inside their subconscious, and no one understands what's happening until the boss himself comes in and confesses that he really is John Walker. But what will shock them more is that until now, he hasn't committed a single murder. He was only creating serial killers for a while to make the organization capture them and pay off his debts, nothing more. And now his goal is to turn the entire organization into one big Mizuhanome field using Osaki, who will help him, because the Mizuhanome isn't a device like they think. It's Osaki herself, and because he's a selfish, arrogant man, he tells them he won't let anyone finish him off or imprison him because he plans to live forever. At that moment, he shoots Cico to stop him from what he's planning and shoots himself, sits on the device, activates it, and before he dies, he gets pulled into his own subconscious. At that moment, he enters a well, but this isn't just any well. It turns out to be a collection of many buried wells under countless faces, and every time he grabs one of their faces, he can enter a new well. That's because he spent a lot of time building his well by infiltrating the subconscious of killers, victims, and anyone he wanted, copying their world and storing it in his own well. So Cico tells them that he'll never let him escape punishment and will follow him to bring him back. Hondo joins him and goes with him, and after they get transported, Osaki arrives at their room, and the analysts get trapped inside their own subconscious as well and wake up to find themselves all together in the same world. They remember that this is the same thing that happened with the 13 nurses from Osaki, meaning their chances of survival are nearly impossible. Only 3 of the nurses woke up, and on top of that, the world they're in is full of massive rolling rocks that force them to run like horses without stopping for even a minute. Cico and Hondo reach the boss's world but don't find him, so they wear one of the inverted masks and get transported to another world where the boss is. But as soon as he sees them, he disappears instantly. So Cico tells Hondo that if he knows how to disappear, then so do we, and he tries several methods until he succeeds, disappears too, and returns to the boss's location. Meanwhile, Matsuki goes to release Inspector Momoki so they can search together for any evidence against the boss after finding out he's innocent. The first place they go is the hospital where Osaki was, and there they find the first piece of evidence, a prototype of the Mizuhanome in the hospital, so they take it with them and leave. As for Cico, he separates from Hondo because she asked him to go after the boss and not help her since she couldn't control this world, couldn't fly, and was about to fall. Luckily, Anido shows up and saves her from falling, and just before she thanks him, Inami appears and accidentally shoots him because he jumped in front of Hondo to protect her from the bullet. Inami then goes to Hondo and tells her, "Now we're even," and puts on Kazuta's mask and gets transported to his world. But then, the monster in that world, which takes Walker's form, finishes her off. As for Hondo, she gets very upset about Anido, and before he dies, he tells her that he's happy because he saved her, and even happier that his wish came true and he's going to die. Cico arrives, and Hondo tells him what Inami did. He tells her not to worry, because there's a high chance that anyone who dies in the subconscious world remains alive in the real world, and they agree to avenge everyone and bring down Walker and hand him over to justice. So immediately they put on a mask and follow Walker into a new world inside the mind of the first killer Walker created. Cico attacks Walker alone, but since Walker is the master of that world, he's stronger than Cico, faster, and has better control over himself. After Walker lands on the ground and gets close to Cico, Hondo appears riding a shark and eats half of Walker's body, but Walker laughs at them and tells them that the master of the Mizuhanome here naturally won't die and can regenerate his body using Mizuhanome energy, and that's exactly what he does. Meanwhile, the analyst team is still struggling with the rocks. One of them jumps, and 2 rocks crash into each other and break. But as soon as sound comes back, the rocks reform. Togo figures out the mystery, grabs the boy, signals everyone to stay silent, and writes on her phone that the rocks are formed by sound. Indeed, as soon as they go silent, the rocks calm down and stop moving. Matsuki and Momoki return to the organization, and Matsuki equips Momoki with a fully outfitted medical suit and sends him inside the organization to search for Osaki. But it's very difficult because the Mizuhanome field is generating a massive amount of pressure on the area. Walker goes to Anido's world, and Cico and Hondo chase him and keep running after him until they reach a certain point and stop. Then they all start laughing at him. Walker is confused and sees a chair, sits on it, and asks them why they're laughing. They tell him, "You turned out to be the easiest one to fall into our trap." He doesn't believe them and thinks they're doing it to provoke him, but at that moment, Cico's severed hand, which exists only in the perforator's world, attacks Walker and pins him to the chair. Hondo tells him that what he's sitting on isn't a chair, it's the control tool that will transport you to a different world of our choosing. He's shocked, and before he reacts, Cico activates the device. After nearly trapping Walker, the 2 of them try to figure out a way to escape. Meanwhile, Momoki is under extreme pressure that causes him to collapse and suffer a heart attack, but Matsuki treats him because he's in control of the suit Momoki is wearing, and eventually Momoki wakes up and continues searching for Osaki. When Osaki sees him, she recognizes him because he was the one who saved her from the challenger the first time, and she thinks he's come to save her again. But when he raises a gun to her face, she realizes he came to eliminate her. But that's not Momoki's intention. He's a police officer and wouldn't kill someone innocent, and the gun is empty. He cuts off communication between himself and Momoki. He tells her that he really wanted to help her, but he still doesn't have a way, and asks her that instead of thinking about death, to think about a beautiful life to live once they find a way to let her control her powers so no one can exploit her. Until that happens, he asks her to return to the room where Walker was keeping her and fall into a deep sleep until they can help her. She believes him and agrees, and goes with him to the room and sinks into a water tank and enters a deep slumber. At that moment, everyone in the organization wakes up, the analysts return, and they're able to extract Cico and Hondo. Hondo checks on Anido, but unfortunately, it's too late, he died. They extract Walker from the Mizuhanome device and find him dead, and with that, the Walker case is completely closed. The organization returns to work again, they cover up everything that happened, and Osaki remains hidden from the world. Hondo and Cico become an unbeatable investigation duo, and enter a different well each time to expose the criminals,